Hello to Legendary Princess. Happy Thursday. Hope you're doing well. Hello to Ken C. Happy Thursday. .5 minutes. Shout out to A Surfer, whose lunch break is over in 1.4 minutes. Hello to Aaron. Hope everybody's doing well today. I was wondering, I was waiting for you to translate what the people were saying. It was another language I didn't understand. I was hoping you'd interpret it for me, but I didn't ever hear you say anything. Hello to Jim. Hey, what's this guy's name spelled backwards, Surfer? What's this guy's name spelled backwards? Hello to Crafty Hats. Thank you for stopping by. Y'all know I love some palindromes, so I came across this card today. Bab. Bab spelled backwards is Bab. So I'm walking with Mike Babb today. One of the Babby Kim. I'm walking with three different people today. Mike Babb is the first one. The next guy I'm walking with is my trivia question for today. All right, so we know Pete Rose died earlier this year, and Pete Rose was the last player manager, right? Major League Baseball player manager. He both played and managed at the same time. But that was in the National League. Who was the last American League player manager? No Googling allowed. Lagging internet on my part or yours? So who was the last American League player manager? Hello to Luminaries. Appreciate you stopping by. Time Machine. Hello to All Things Country. Yeah, I'll give you a hint. You got to go back to 1979 to find out who was the last American League player manager. But I got him walking with me today. I hear you, Surfer. You don't have to promote, man. You promote yourself on your own channel. That's good. All right, so the last National League player manager was Pete Rose, but the last American League player manager, today's his birthday. Another hint, he played for the Chicago White Sox, Chicago Cubs, and St. Louis Cardinals. So he played for three different Major League Baseball teams. Hello to Aries World. Hello to Zach Sports Cars and Collectibles. Hope everybody's having a great Thursday. Hello to Hamster. Appreciate you stopping by. It's kind of, there he is. There's the answer. Don Kessinger. Don Kessinger is the answer to today's trivia question. He was the last American League player manager. Hello to Peter Pan. He was a shortstop from 1964 to 1979. National League All-Star 6 times in a career which spanned 16 seasons, 12 of which were with the Cubs. Known as the Great Gloveman, Don participated in all 3 of Chicago's major league record, tying 3 triple plays in his rookie year. And in 1969, he established a new big league mark for shortstops, going 54 consecutive games without making an error. Kessinger made his mark at bat, too, when he became the first Chicago Cub in more than a quarter century to record 6 hits and as many at-bats in a single game in 1971. So that's pretty cool. He went 6 for 6 in a game in 1971. But that's the last, it don't mention him being player manager on this card, but he was the last American League player manager, Don Kessinger. He's a great through-the-mail autograph signer. If anybody does that, I recommend Don Kessinger. But as you can see down at the bottom, born 7/17/42. So he turned what? 58 plus 25 is 83 years old today. Zach is on the tractor. But once Zach gets off the tractor, tell him I said hello, and hello to Hamster, hello to Bunnykins, hello to the whole family. 3 a.m. for Crafty Hats. Wow. Didn't have that on the bingo card. All right, so I'm walking with Don Kessinger. I'm walking with Mike Babb. And the third player I'm walking with is more, even getting closer to newer time, to the now, but still far off. But maybe some of y'all can remember this next guy. Anybody remember this guy? Because it's his birthday today too. I kind of appreciate you saying that, Ken, but I kind of don't. Super Bowl 25, you missed it by 1, Aaron. You're right. Super Bowl 25, which was in 1991, but the season was 1990. I think it was January the 27th, 1991. Scott Norwood's known for wide right, but that was my thought for today. Today's his birthday. As you can see, 7/17/1960. So Scott Norwood turned 65 years old today. So happy birthday to Scott Norwood. And you know, it bothers me that he's known for wide right. I mean, it did happen, but it is just a game, you know. But that was one of my thoughts for today is, you know, we as humans tend to remember somebody more for their mess ups than for the good that they've done. You know, I mean, I don't know him personally, but I'm sure he's done, you know, some other things besides just missing a field goal, you know. And, you know, that's I guess one of the things, some of the things I don't like about us is as humans, as people, is sometimes we focus more on the negative of somebody than the positive. All right, Crafty Hats, I appreciate you stopping by. I hope you get you some rest. Take care. All right, Papa and Baby Bear. Hey, Papa and Baby Bear, I just showed a Cubs card. Shout out to Papa and Baby Bear, who's been showing a lot of the city of Chicago lately. Y'all go check out his videos. But I was just talking about Don Kessinger. of the Chicago Cubs. But Papa Bear and Baby Bear just made some videos of Wrigley Field. So like I said, y'all go check them out. If you're not subscribed, give them a subscription, give them a like. I don't think you can comment on their recent videos because every time I tried to, it said no comments on it. So, but I was there. I left a like. I've never seen it. There have been bears in this area. I've heard people talk about it before, but I've never seen any. Not in this area. In Tennessee, I've seen them, of course, but that's in the mountains. Yeah, Papa Bear, that was my trivia question of the day. Is Pete Rose was the last National League player manager, but Don Kessinger was the last American League player manager back in 1979. I think he only won like 40% of his games. That was the only year he managed, and he only won like 40% of his games. So he stepped down. But still a cool trivia question, and he was a great player. Talladega track. I've been to Talladega. I'm in Alabama, but I'm not up there. Yeah, I was telling everybody that Don Kessinger is also great through the autograph signer. If anybody has any cards and wants to get an autograph, you can send it to Mr. Kessinger. His grandson played with the Astros for a little bit, but they traded him away. I was kind of sad about that. All right, the last time I went on a walk, it started storming. I had to shut down the live and get a ride, so it's looking like I'm walking into a storm again. I am not the trivia king, but I do enjoy some trivia. I appreciate the shout out. Hopefully, I can stop by Jeff's live before he's done. Yeah, that's just this portion there, and you ain't seen the whole. One portion of the road is pretty newly. It probably got paved a couple years ago, but the other half got a lot of potholes. So looks can be deceiving. Paul Harvey would say there's the rest of the story of this road, but this side is pretty smooth. What's up, Sean? Dinner time, all right? Enjoy your meal. Who are the Astros playing? I ain't even looked at the after the All-Star break schedule. Seems like I might have seen that they're playing this. I want to say the Mariners a while back. I think I seen it, but I don't know if that's the next team they play. Yeah, I miss Paul Harvey. I tell people this from time to time. I don't know if anybody. I don't like going to the dentist. I don't think most people do. But the thing that I look forward to about going to the dentist, my local dentist, is usually when I went in there while I was waiting on him to, make his rounds to get to where I was at. Usually they'd be playing the radio over the speaker, and it would be Paul Harvey would come on at some point. So I always look forward to hearing Paul Harvey. I didn't look forward to hearing the drill bit, but hearing Paul Harvey is always something to look forward to. Hello to Starshine. Happy Thursday. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, there's a big difference in Paul Harvey and Steve Harvey. um, I could kind of envision Paul Harvey like hosting the Family Feud though, with his voice. Yeah, Cheyenne, I recognized your little, whatever you call the emoji thing. Your emoji thingamajiggy. But I hope you're doing well today. Hope everybody's doing great today. Happy Thursday. Just got out of the hospital. Sorry to hear that. Hope you're doing better now. Yeah, I like looking at the different clouds and seeing the different forms and shapes. Fell through your floor. Wow, that's not cool. Did you break anything or? Yeah, prayers for Star, Cheyenne, and prayers for Ava for sure. Hello to Steph. Jersey loves Steph. Good to see you. Hello to Hodges. Appreciate everybody stopping by. Hope you're having a great Thursday. Hodges is a baseball guy. Let's see if he knows today's trivia. Earlier, Hodges, I don't know if he was here, so I don't know if you heard it or not, but I was asking. All right, the last Major League Baseball player manager was Pete Rose, who recently passed away this year. But he was the last National League and Major League Baseball player manager. But who was the last American League player manager was my trivia question. I was gonna I was gonna film the sunset, but right where the sun sets is this big dark cloud here, so things don't always go as planned, right? You can't, like the Rolling Stones said, you can't always get what you want, but you just might find you get what you need. So I like bright sunshiny days, but if we didn't have rainy days, everything would die. We all need water. So they're both needful. Sunshine's needful, but so is rain. But you can always find a silver lining in a cloud, right? If you look hard enough, you can always find a silver lining in a cloud. Hello to Nature Dog Realms. Happy Thursday. But yeah, Don Kessinger is the answer to today's trivia question. No, Don Kessinger was the last one. Yeah, Rose was the last one for both leagues, but Don Kessinger was the last American League player manager. He managed and played for the Chicago White Sox in 1979. Hello to Julie Farnham. Appreciate you stopping by. So yeah, I went walking with Don Kessinger today. I also went walking with Mike Babb. Babb spelled backwards is Babb. And one of the reasons I like palindromes is, you know, they're the same forwards and backwards. Babb, B-A-A-B, same forward and backwards. But I think that's pretty. Palindromes to me are like pretty illustrative of how we should be. We should be pretty consistent forwards and backwards. You know, like if I see you today, I ought to be nice to you today. And if I see you again tomorrow, I ought to be nice to you again. It ought to be some sort of consistency, right? And I know we all have, you know, maybe our days where we, you know, didn't get enough sleep or woke up on the wrong side of the bed. But for the most part, I believe we ought to be, you know, more consistent, I guess, than we are. And that's one of my favorite things about God is He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. He don't ever change. It's us that are inconsistent. But may we strive to be more consistent, you know, when it comes to, you know, important things like being kind and stuff like that. Yeah, always be yourself. That's for sure. You know, you can't be anybody else. Although, you know, we as humans sometimes try to be this person or that person. You know, I've talked about that in previous videos. How when I was a kid, I wanted to be Larry Bird. You know, but I found out one day I wasn't Larry Bird. Not only by my shooting, but just you can't be Larry. There's only one Larry Bird. There's only one Michael Jordan. You know, there's only one. Sometimes we hurt ourselves by trying to be somebody else that we're not called to be. Steph says when she's hungry, she has to watch herself. She gets hangry. Hello to our Jurassic Chaos. I appreciate you stopping by. Happy Thursday to you as well. Thank you. Yeah, Larry Bird's my favorite basketball player of all time. I just seen somebody say Charles Barkley. He's number 2 on my favorite basketball player list. Aaron said Charles. He wanted to be Charles Barkley. Hey, me too, Aaron. You're not alone. I'm not as thin as I once was. I think Toby Keith said I'm not as young as I once was, but me, you, and Charles Barkley could sing "I'm not as thin as I once was." But the thing that I admired about Charles Barkley, I mean, there's some things he says I don't like, but on the court, and he's my fellow Alabamian, I love that. But on the court, he was only, you know, 6'6", somewhere in that area, 6'5", 6'6". So he was, you know, fairly short for a forward. You know, there's guards that are taller than him, but but he's the 19th all-time leading rebounder in the NBA. Of the history of the NBA, he's 19th all-time, and most of the people that are on that list are going to be centers because they're over 7 foot tall. They closer to the rebounds, you know. But Charles knew how to get to where the ball was, and that was always my favorite statistic in basketball. Whether I was playing it, when I played like Pee Wee League and junior varsity and varsity. But my favorite thing that I, like to do was rebound. Terrible. That's funny, Steph. Too, but definitely, another thing I was thinking about with the palindrome, I was talking about praying for people, and yeah, about prayer definitely works. What I was going to say about this Bab is the same forward and backwards. From the top to the bottom, it's spelled Baab, and from the bottom to the top, it's spelled Baab. But I was thinking about it in the prayers. Like Aries just said, yes, indeed. But I was thinking about his daughter. We need to pray for his daughter from head to toe, from top to bottom, and from bottom to top. That whatever is going on, whatever kind of issue that she's having within her body, from top to bottom, that God can remove it, in whatever way he chooses, whether he just does it himself or he uses a doctor, to, prescribe the cure, whatever, just prayers for his daughter and her health. But, God touch her from the top of her head to the bottom of her feet. But shout out to Mike Kessinger, Don Kessinger, who's today is his birthday, his 83rd birthday. Shout out, these people probably aren't watching, but shout out to Scott Norwood, who's 65 years old today. And when you mention his name, most people will remember him for Super Bowl 25. He missed the field goal, and the the Bills lost 4 Super Bowls in a row. But that was the first Super Bowl that they played in against the Giants back when uh, I'm drawing a blank. Bill Belichick was the defensive coordinator for the New York Giants. But most people, when they remember or they mention Scott Norwood, they remember him for his mess up. But let's not be guilty of that. We all mess up from time to time, right? But and there's a verse in speaking. This goes along with praying. We talked about praying. This goes along with praying for one another. There's a I didn't bring my Bible with me. I usually bring a small one. I hate I didn't now, but there's a verse in James that says, "Confess your faults one to another." So, in other words, it's all right for me to talk about my faults to you, but it's really not good for you to talk about my faults to somebody else, or even to me, unless you're trying to help me, right? But so much of that goes on. But it talks about confess your faults one to another that you may be healed. So there's a lot of talking, about people in this world that we're living in. People talking bad about each other, but if we could only, instead of talking bad about other people or confessing their faults and pointing the finger, when, like somebody said long ago, when you point one finger, you got three more pointing back at you. If we would just look within more than we look without, I believe this world would be a better place and less judgment going on. Um, yeah, well said, Papa Bear, about Scott Norwood. He's so much. I don't know that much about him as far as off the field, but I know he's so much more than that one play. That football is just a game. That sometimes we put too much into. I love sports, but sports is. I mean, as a sports lover, I'll say it. Sports is overrated, and I love sports, but life is so much more than a game, right? Hello to Sarah. Sometimes I get to talking, I don't see the chat all the way, so I miss Sarah. So I appreciate you, in memory, John, stopping by. Happy Thursday. I hope you're doing well. There's the sun. The sun is making its way again. But today is Scott Norwood's birthday. So happy birthday, Scott Norwood. Happy birthday, Don Kessinger. Sometimes we sometimes I hear people complain about their birthday, because they're getting older. And it does. There's things that go along with getting older that's bad. You start hurting and different things. But it's a blessing to get older. Every day that you have is a blessing. So be thankful for your birthdays. And I got a devotional for today. Um, for this date, Thursday, July the 17th. I read from. I mean, the best devotionals reading directly from the Bible. But I also like to read from various little devotional books that have Bible verses in them, and this is one of them. Our Daily Bread. But yeah, and this is what I forgot to mention. I'm glad you mentioned that, Papa Bear. Papa Bear says people tend to forget he kicked two field goals to get them that far. And I was thinking also about what if it was Jim Kelly, the quarterback, trying to kick it, or Thurman Thomas, they wouldn't have helped, but that wasn't my main thought. Also was, if you go back and look at his statistics, if you research Scott Norwood's statistics, he's third all time in Buffalo Bills scoring, and the Buffalo Bills have been around a long time. He's third all time in scoring, but yet he's known for wide right, and that's what's sad. That's one of the many good things that he done. He scored more points than most anybody in the history of the Bills, and he still gets remembered for wide right. I also didn't mention he played here in Alabama right before he played with the Bills. He played for the Birmingham Stallions. I appreciate you stopping by, Papa Bear. Have a good work remainder. Whistle while you work, and hope to see some more Chicago footage, downtown Chicago or wherever it is in Chicago. Different places you've been showing us. I love the Wizard of Oz. I wasn't aware of that place. I knew of Wrigley Field, but not the Wizard of Oz thing that you showed. Um, well, I mentioned it earlier, Steph. I love sports. I just, as I'm getting older, I realize sports is not as important as it once was. There are more important things, but I still like statistics of sports. Um, But the thing that I keep thinking about, one day all these sporting events won't really matter in heaven. But not to say we shouldn't. There's nothing wrong with sports. In some ways, as long as you don't put it above God. Yeah, that's right, Aaron. Over the years, you accumulate knowledge. Of course, I'm starting to forget a lot of it. but but one day in heaven, it's not going to matter who missed the field goal in the Super Bowl. You know, what's going to matter in heaven is Jesus, and that's my devotion. Deuteronomy chapter 15, verse 4, there need be no poor people among you. Loving Jesus most. The members asked why their church was buying a steeple. Was this the best use of God's resources? What about feeding the poor? The pastor replied that the funds came from donors and needed to be spent as they wished. Besides, he quoted Jesus, "You will always have the poor among you." The pastor quickly apologized for his flippant, out of context remark, which led me to wonder what was Jesus' context. And when you read the Bible, context is so important. A lot of people take a lot of verses out of context. But what was Jesus' context? 6 days before his death, a woman anointed Jesus' feet with expensive perfume. The disciples were disgusted. Why wasn't this perfume sold to help the poor? Jesus replied by quoting Deuteronomy chapter 15, verse 11, "You will always have the poor among you, but you will not always have me." Jesus often cited Deuteronomy, so he knew what was written a few sentences earlier. There need be no poor among you, for in the land the Lord your God has given you, he will richly bless you, if only you fully obey the Lord your God. Perhaps this was another reason for Jesus' rebuke. Poor people existed only because Israel hadn't obeyed God's instructions. Now the poor were being used to distract from Jesus, the true Israelite who would fully obey to the end. We need not choose between Jesus and the poor. We love people best by loving him most, and loving him most inspires us to love others best. And I always love questions because, questions in devotionals get me to searching myself. I already mentioned about pointing at others. The best person you can point at is yourself and examine yourself. And it says, how do you help those less fortunate? How do I help those less fortunate? How does the life of Jesus and the things he taught inspire you to share with those in need? Dear Jesus, you are beautiful, the prayer says, and worthy of all my praise. And then here's Deuteronomy chapter 15, verses 1 through 11. It says, at the end of every 7 years, you must cancel debts. This is how it is to be done. Every creditor shall cancel any loan they have made to a fellow Israelite. They shall not require payment from anyone among their own people. You may require payment from a foreigner, but you must cancel any debt your fellow Israelite owes you. However, there need be no poor among you. The land the Lord your God has given you to possess as your inheritance, he will richly bless you. If only you fully obey the Lord your God and are careful to follow all these commands I'm giving you today. For the Lord your God will bless you as he has promised, and you will lend to many nations, but will borrow from none. You will rule over many nations, but none will rule over you. If anyone is poor among your fellow Israelites, do not be hard-hearted or tight-fisted toward them. Rather, be open-handed and freely lend them whatever they need. Give generously to them and do so without a grudging heart. Then, because of this, the Lord your God will bless you in all your work and in everything you put your hand to. There will always be poor people in the land. Therefore, I command you to be open-handed toward your fellow Israelites who are poor and needy in your land. And the insight here is in the 1st century BC, the Jews practiced what was known as prosbul, where a lender could transfer a personal loan to an institution or bank, making it exempt from the law of debt forgiveness in Deuteronomy chapter 15. This attempted to encourage rich Jews to continue lending to the poor because it meant they'd still get their money back. In the New Testament, Jesus often spoke about money and challenged his disciples to live radical lives. Love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. When we love Christ, he helps us to love those in need. So that's a pretty cool devotional. I think of there's a Bible verse in 1 John, the epistle to John. It says we love him because he first loved us. And the word love is just threw around so loosely in the world we live in, but love always starts with God. The Bible says God is love. So love always starts with God. We didn't love him first. He first loved us. But he made us and he designed us to love him in return. I mean, it's an awesome thought to know that he loves me. But when you get to that point where you love him back, that's where we all need to be. He loves us all. It doesn't matter where you're at. Aaron's over there in Hawaii. God loves Aaron. Jersey, Steph over there in Jersey, Aries, people from around the world. Wherever you're at, God loves you. But the question is, are we loving him back? And then once we love him back, we can love others that are around us. And I think about the story of the Good Samaritan. There was a guy that asked Jesus, "Who is my neighbor?" And he was really asking Jesus. The Bible says he asked him to tempt him, to test him. He wasn't being sincere in his questioning of Jesus, but because he asked that question, a good answer came out of it that Jesus taught us. That our neighbor is not just the guy that lives to the right of me, to the left of me, above me, and below me, just physically, my neighbor, or the apartment beside, wherever you live, whatever your housing is, the people beside you, that's your neighbors, but it extends to anybody that you can help, anybody that you can show mercy on, anybody that you can minister to is your neighbor. And that's what we learn in the story of the Good Samaritan, that there was a guy that was beat, he was robbed, he was beaten, he was left for dead. And the two people that you thought would have came and been a neighbor to him and helped him in the situation that he was in, he was almost dead, he was dying, but the people that you thought would have helped him during his time of need were religious people, but they weren't willing to stop and help him. They were too busy doing other things, what they thought were more important things. But then there was a guy that was a Samaritan. Samaritans have no dealings with the Jews. They didn't get along. But this guy was a Samaritan, and he stopped what he was doing and he ministered to the guy that needed help. So he was the true neighbor. And that's one of my favorite stories in all the Bible, the Good Samaritan. Because if you were that person that was beaten up, left for dead, robbed from, and you were dying, you would love for somebody to bend down and get you out of that shape that you're in to help you, And it comes down to, treating people like you like to be treated. If that were me, I would want somebody to help me. So if I see somebody in that shape, then I should want to help them. It don't matter what color they are or what country they live in. My neighbor is that person that has a need, and we all have something. Not of us have the same resources to help somebody. Like some people are more, financially able to help. So that's the way that they can minister to somebody else, is through finances. But there's other ways. Today for you it might just be for you to smile at somebody. Somebody just may need to see somebody else smiling today, and you may be that person. That could be your ministry for today, is just smile to a person that's looking sad. And there's so many different ways that we can minister and be a neighbor to somebody else. And God help us. And I'm looking at myself when I'm talking about this. I'm examining my own heart. I know I can do better. All right, I haven't been looking at the chat. I get to talking, but I appreciate you stopping by, Hodges. I see Share Bear's name. Somebody mentioned Share Bear, so Share Bear's in here. Thank you for stopping by, Share Bear. Aaron says your actions speak louder than words, 100%. And one thing, I remember that saying from when I was a kid, but I even added more to that saying in my own mind. I've heard that saying for most of my life, the actions speak louder than words, and I agree with it. But even beyond that, I found that even more so than that is reactions speak more than actions. And my greatest example of that is Jesus on the cross. Because while he was on the cross, the actions were cruel against him, were saying horrible things about him. You know, they were putting a crown of thorns on his head, you know, stabbing him, talking bad about him, you know, and he was dying for all of our sins. But there on the cross, cruelty met grace or kindness. You know, and that reaction spoke so loud to me. His reaction, even though we mistreated him and the people during that time mistreated him, we've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Even though we've done our part to be cruel to him, his response to all, his reaction to our actions is love and forgiveness. And you know, ever since I've read about that and just and envisioned that in my mind, you know, that thought came to me is even more so than our actions speaking louder than our words. Also, our reactions speak louder than our actions, I believe. And I've always loved it's in Luke chapter 23, verse 34. Jesus says there on the cross, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Even though he was at his, could you imagine being in the worst pain of your life, people mistreating you, and your response to that is, hey, I love you, I forgive you? You know, that speaks volumes to me. But, you know, as we go through life, you know, I wonder how many times, you know, sometimes, you know, you're called to be that good Samaritan to help somebody that's down and out. But sometimes you're that person that's down and out and you need somebody to help you up. Aaron says the definition of courage is doing the right thing in the most difficult times. That's good. And you know, you can add two prefixes to that word courage, you know, and I think about this a lot too. Discourage and encourage. You know, and I wish I had a perfect, this is one of my most things I would rather be than probably a lot of other things is be an encourager. I wish I had a perfect record of being an encourager. I wish everything that I've ever said, everything that I've ever done was an encouragement to somebody else, but I can't say that because I know I've done things that's, you know, even discouraged my own self, much less other people. But I believe everything that I say and everything that I do ought to be an encouragement to somebody else. And when I discourage somebody, either by my actions or my words, I'm failing. You know, I believe that's true of everybody. So we need to examine ourselves and say, is what I'm about to do, is what I'm think of, you know, you always, but you control your words, so always, and your actions. So before you say something, before you do something, say, is what I'm about to say and what I'm about to do, is it going to encourage somebody or is it going to discourage somebody? Is it going to charge them? Kind of like a battery, you know, give them a boost. What I'm going to say, boost them, or is it's going to drain them? It's going to hurt them, you know. If we really done that, thought before we acted, thought before we speak, you know, we would do so much better. A lot of times we just rush into our actions, rush into our words without doing the thinking part, which is the most important. But definitely, as I walk, the shadow knows. The shadow knows as I walk down these roads on my lives. One of my goals, is just to encourage somebody today. That's my goal. Before I leave, before I start off, that's my prayer. I want to say something, that would charge somebody a little bit, because I know as we go through this tough world we're living in, you get run down, right? Whether it be because of your job, just so many different reasons that run you down. But we all need encouragement. There's nobody that don't need encouragement. So I guess the more of what I'm trying to say today is stop and think about what you're going to say before you say it. And your actions always, before you, like, let's just say if I was going to walk over there to where I just left from, right? Before I walk over there and do that, it was in my mind first to do it. So the importance of right thoughts, but maybe we stop before we say anything and do anything. Maybe we stop and think about it first and ask ourselves, is what I'm about to do going to help somebody or hurt somebody? Is what I'm about to do or say going to help me or hurt me? And if we thought before we acted, if we thought before we speak, we could reduce our errors just so much haste, And like the old saying goes, haste makes waste. That's right. The only way you can change your past, the only way I can change my past is getting forgiveness. Getting forgiveness from our past. That's the only way you can change your past, and you're right. But you definitely can learn from your mistakes and be a better person because of it. Not that you strive to make more mistakes, but just to learn from your mistakes is a very good thing. Hello, Daisy May. Haven't been looking at the chat fully. Appreciate you stopping by. Hello, Crafty Hats is back. You need to go to sleep, Crafty Hats. But I can't tell you what to do. I'm just... But I appreciate everybody that stopped by today. It means a lot. Hope you're having a great Thursday. Sun is going down here. It's been a pretty good... I mean, every day's a good day. But as far as it's been off and on rain all day. But it's still been a good day. Hello to National Parks Princess. Hello to Big 3 Dash, and I hope y'all are doing well today. Happy Thursday. All right, Steph, I appreciate you stopping by. And it means a lot anytime anybody stops by, whether it be, just to say hello and just, go about your day. I know we all got lives to live, but it means a lot, how long you stay means a lot. But thank you for stopping by. But I hope everybody's enjoying today, because every day is a gift. I mentioned, oh, I forgot Daisy Mays. Hey, Daisy, I got this card. I took Scott Norwood with me on my walk today. Today I brought 3 people on my walk, but Scott Norwood was one of them. Which I think this card is cool because he's kicking off a tee. You don't usually see that on cards. But I talked about Scott Norwood some because since we're talking about forgiveness, I guess that kind of ties in because most of the time when somebody says Scott Norwood, the first thing somebody's going to say is wide right. Most of the time. Yeah, he did mess up, and then comes the blame game. Some people said it was his fault. Some said it was the holders. Different people, gave different reasons, and but my main point was, he did mess up. He missed the field goal, a important field goal, but it was just a game. But he's remembered, I don't know what the percentage would be, but I would say it'd be pretty high. The first thing that comes out of people's mouth when you hear Scott Norwood would be wide right. But in all the history of the Buffalo Bills, he scored the 3rd most points all time of anybody. He done good in the time that he was there. But what people remember him for was his mess up. And I don't think that's fair. And I think we do that as humans a lot. We have a tendency to focus in on people's something negative that they've done over the good that they've done, and so that was one of my things that I was, thinking about today. How we can be guilty of doing that, focusing too much on people's faults instead of, their successes. Hello to Alan Williamson. Because we all have things that we're not proud of. The only person that's lived a life that he had a life that was his father was pleased with everything he ever done was Jesus. But as far as you and I, we've all had things where we've messed up somewhere along the way. But I believe in forgiveness. And we shouldn't focus in on people's failures, and that don't excuse if. I mean, his missed field goal, I ain't talking, that's not a moral issue. But I'm talking about, if you've done something or I've done something to hurt somebody, but then we've asked for forgiveness for it, we shouldn't be focusing on where it messed up anymore. We should move on and think about how we can make it better, Hello to Alan Williamson. The sun is shining on my phone. So I have an excuse. There are good excuses. There's a lot of bad excuses, but I do have a good excuse not seeing the chat. Too good. I still can see it though. But I hope everybody's having a great Thursday. Every day is a gift from God. That's why they call it the present. That's what a song says. I like that saying. The birds are singing. I actually got out walking a little bit earlier than I normally do. Usually it's getting dark by the time I'm headed back. The mosquitoes, are usually biting. The birds have quit singing, but I still hear the birds singing. But today is Scott Norwood's birthday. I don't think I re-mentioned that. I mentioned it earlier. But Scott Norwood turns 65 years old today. So Scott Norwood, if you're watching here, happy birthday. If you're not watching, happy birthday. And there's Adventure America. Appreciate you stopping by, Troy. Happy Thursday. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, I was telling him, Daisy, also right before he started playing with the Buffalo Bills, he played here in Alabama. Scott Norwood did. He played for the Birmingham Stallions, who was our USFL team back in the day. And I was thinking about that also. Another thing I was thinking about is Aaron. Aaron was talking about what was he? Uh, I can't remember now. He says something along the line of being yourself. You know, you can't be other people. You only can be yourself. Something to that. I can't remember his exact wording, but so I'm not re-quoting him because I messed that up. But I was thinking about like sport. You know, football in general. You know, each position is important to the well-being of the team, right? But not everybody can run fast. So there's only select few that are wide receivers, but they got their job to do. And there's only select few that can throw good, the quarterback. There's only a select few that can run the ball good, the running back. The kicker, Scott Norwood, you know, he gets put down for missing that field goal. But, you know, if Jim Kelly would have tried to kick it or you know, some of the other players, Andre Reed or the running back, you know, they wouldn't have even got as close as he did. You know, he done a good job at what he did. He just, you know, wasn't successful at that time. But I was just thinking about how sometimes people try to be, you know, compare people to other people, but not everybody's a wide receiver. I'm talking about life. I ain't talking about on the field. You know, we're not all the same person. We all have different gifts. So it's dangerous to compare people to other people. You know, just use the gifts that God has given you. You know, don't try to be somebody else because you're not supposed to be that other person. If y'all have never walked backwards, I'd you know encourage you to do it. It's pretty. It's kind of like moonwalking. It's just not quite sliding your feet the same. I guess you could just get. It'd be a lot slower, I guess. But I better not do it too long. It's probably not the safest thing. Because one of my sayings when I go walking is it pays to pay attention. Always be aware of your surroundings. Know what's going on around you. Be careful wherever it is, wherever it is that you are. Hello to Tex. Happy Thursday. Hope you're doing well. That's right. There's no I in team, like the saying goes. But we live in a selfish world. I guess that's maybe why sometimes we're guilty of focusing on the negative instead of the positive. I'm trying to remember. There was some other birthday. I didn't bring it with me, but there was other people that had birthdays today, and I was going to talk about them some, but I done forgot. Me and my memory, especially when I go walking. I guess it's kind of running my brain battery when I walk. It kind of discharges the memory section. All right, so the cards that I brought today were either from 1991, I think, or 1992. But I got something else with me I forgot I had in my pocket. A Surfer was here earlier. I wish I would have had it, shown it to him. But this is from 2002. I brought the the Spam Mobile with me today. Shout out to A Surfer. What, 23 years old. Still haven't opened it yet. Another public service announcement: don't litter. Do your best to leave the world a better place than when you found it. And littering makes the world a worse place. You know, it's going to affect somebody down the road in a bad way. That's another thing, you know, think before you act. I don't know if Aaron's still around, but Aaron, here's where the smooth runs out. It's kind of like life in general. You know, some areas of your life is smooth, but then some not so smooth. Life has its ups and downs. Life is a roller coaster. But I believe the important thing as we go through the ups and downs, the highs and lows of life, is to be in the seat with God. That's what'll help you through your downs in life. See what I'm talking about? Oh, it gets worse from here too. That's right. That part they did a little bit down here. They didn't. They had some of that selective. It's funny. I was just watching one of my old lives of me walking, and I was talking about I come across potholes, and me and Dirk Remington always talked about potholes. He even wrote a song about potholes. But um, I was talking to him about, why is it that they have like extra asphalt when it comes to like the speed bumps. They build the speed bumps out of asphalt. They seem to have plenty for that, but then when it comes to potholes, there's like a shortage. I couldn't put the two and two together on that one. But I guess they're both speed bumps in a way, because if you know where the potholes are, you'll definitely slow down. But shout out to Don Kessinger, whose birthday is today. Shout out to Scott Norwood, who has a birthday today. And then I brought this guy just because he's a palindrome. It ain't his birthday today, but Mike Babb, Babb spelled backwards is Babb. And Babb, if Mr. Babb, if you're watching this, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. I don't even remember how to pronounce your name. I'm guessing it's Babb. It may be Babe for all I know. He may be a babe. Or you could say it like a goat too, like a sheep or something. Bab. There's so many ways you could go with this name. I don't know, but if you're watching Mr. Babb, Babe, Bab, um, when is his birthday? December the 6th. But I appreciate your palindrome name. I love it. Hope you're having a great day wherever you're at. I got to see if he signs autographs through the mail. That would be a cool one for me to get. I need to start a palindrome through the mail autograph. collection. But I appreciate everybody that stopped by today. It means a lot. One of my goals is I go walking. I have a lot of reasons to walk, but one of my main reasons is I hope to encourage somebody as they too walk down this road of life. So that's my goal, and I hope I've encouraged somebody today. But I want to remind everybody that I love everybody. I don't hate anybody, and it's all because of somebody who died for me. But good night to y'all. God bless. Happy Thursday remainder, and I hope to see y'all again somewhere down the road.